Hello, tribe. How are you? It's okay if not everyone. I love you. It's okay if not everyone like because half of us are still kind of dead, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I woke up this morning. I was just like, what is life right now? But I'm so glad to be here with you guys, and I'm so glad to be part of this moment. Because if many of you know my story, you know I was raised with a family who were politicians, highly educated, who invested in a romance novel every night. No, who laughed? Category romances are amazing, but when it was my turn to pick that kind of book that I would pick up at night and read and lay on the other side because I was done with it was always the cozy. It was the small towns, it was the cats, which that part I never understood, but I would with it. It was Murder, She Wrote. You know, we all know Jessica did it. She killed all of them, and you know she did. Right? And ever since the indie market opened and blew up, it's only gotten better. It absolutely has gotten better. And the more weird ways we can find to kill people and to find out who did it without cursing or sexy fun times, I'm down for it. So thank you so very much to the folks up here who I'm to introduce. They don't introduce themselves because my mind is asleep and shitting names. And thankful for y'all who continue to write for, if nothing else, me to be able to read something at night that isn't my own work. All right, then starting from my right, why don't you take the mic, pass it down, and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Mariah Sinclair. I am a cozy cover designer, and what I'm probably best known is for a huge amount of pre-mades, cozy pre-mades, and I title all of them, and most everyone keeps those titles.
Hi everyone, I'm Jerry White. I have a pen name, J.A. Whiting. I just put up a new pre-order for number 6 series, and the other ones have like 18 books, 12 books.
What's the name of it?
The new one? The Pine Hill Inn. It's a little bit witchy, a little bit ghost hunter, so it's something new to try. nice to be here, and thanks for everyone for coming.
Hi all, I'm Shea MacLeod, and I started way back in the olden days in 2011 as an indie author with romance. And a few years ago, I decided to try my hand at my true love, Cozy Mysteries. So now I have 4 series. The Corpse in the Cabana was my first cozy, which takes place at a writer convention. I'm best known for my Lady Rample mysteries, which take place in the 1930s in England and involve a lot of cocktails, jazz, and really hot jazz musicians. So yeah, and they've hit some of the #1 Amazon whatevers. So that's been really fun, and so that's what I do now.
My name is Becca. Actually, today the part of Carolyn Dean will be played by Becca Syme. Carolyn cannot be with us today. I have a similar story. I started off in romance and moved to cozy. I have, interestingly, sold more on Radish than I sell on Amazon. And I'll talk about that more later, but we have a Paracozy series, and then also I write Paracozy with a co-writer. I have a cozy series on my own. All of my books are Montana set, small town because that's where I live, and both paracozy and contemporary cozy. So,
I'm sorry, I don't understand the first term. The paracozy.
Paranormal cozy
paranormal.
mystery. Sorry, paracozy.
I thought you said pear. I was like the fruit.
Yes, cozy is only about pears exclusively. No, pears is only the crime. Paranormal cozy mysteries, witches, werewolves, and vampires.
Witches.
Witches also.
And witches.
Witches are hot.
Yeah, but fruit is not.
I don't know, Piers, put a little beret, a little mustache.
It becomes a French fence.
Live here.
No, that's the part where I'm sorry. I want to get off of that. Anyway, now, I'm listening to you guys talk about what you write, and I think we've really gotten away from the whole oh my God. Can someone say her name for me? Thank you. Agatha Christie, Ellery Queen. I tried that. It didn't help with my pronunciation though. That very straight line, there's a group of folks, old folks in a castle somewhere, somebody dies, and then all of a sudden it's like, I know what the killer is. We've gone far and away from that.
Oh, it's basically the same, it's just in a bakery now.
Yes. Yeah, but that is true. Like, somebody dies in the bakery and everyone was at the bakery at the time.
Yeah.
But what are the major differences you are seeing now away from what you traditionally think about when you think about a cozy?
I'll start this one and pass the mic along. So the biggest deal for me is that I feel like there are more people getting into reading cozy who were not reading it before, and so that makes the market shift a little bit. So just as a for instance, we got into writing paranormal cozy because we were writing paranormal romance, and started writing paracozy because it was like something new and different, right? And we saw people who were reading the books that don't like so I write contemporaries as well. They were not reading my contemporary cozies, so it feels like the market has expanded significantly, especially as new people are making new genres. Like we were just talking about science fiction cozies. Like one of the projects that I have coming up is actually cozies in space. And there are people who are writing cozies in space right now, and Shea is one of them. And so it's like, I feel like the market has brought on more people, and so sometimes that means the rules change a little bit, and that's kind of what I feel like we've seen, yeah.
I want to clarify, my sci-fi mystery is not quite cozy because there's these sexy times. So I'm not sure what you call that. Yeah, I think that it's really interesting because I think we're seeing different popular subgenres of cozy pop up all over the place that really correspond with what's happening in the wider world of, well, they have Downton Abbey was super hot, and Miss Fisher's Mysteries, and Murdoch Mysteries, and now all of a sudden, you see 1920s and 30s shoot up. Now they existed. There were a few. I published my first Lady Rample in November 2017. At that time, I think there was maybe one or two other indie authors writing in that genre. Everybody else was Trek. Everybody. And there was like 5. And they had a lot of books each, but there's only like 5 people. All of a sudden, like a few months later, it went insane. And there were like 20s and 30s popping out of the woodwork. So now everything's Art Deco. And it's fabulous and I love it. And so it's like whatever kind of cozy weirdness you like, if you want to do steampunk cozy or Western cozy or talking gerbils cozy, there's don't do that one. Don't do that. But I mean, yeah, as long as you keep the right cozy elements and respect the cozy elements, you could probably get away with a weird chinchilla. I mean, they're cozy, right? So I think there's something for everyone, and if you have some weird, oddball, off-the-wall idea for a cozy, don't think that it can't fit just because it's not in an English village. You just have to find your people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happened with indie publishing, is it's really opened up a lot of interesting, fun stuff.
Yeah, I think having the paranormal and the witches and the animals and, it does open up a lot of different ways to go in your cozies. I don't keep everything in a small town. I have Boston as the setting for one of my cozies. But it's Boston, but it seems cozier because I tend to focus more on the neighborhoods in the area. I kind of made up one that seems like Beacon Hill. So I think a city is a really good thing to place your cozy in because somebody wrote in a review, I have one cozy where it's in a very small town, and she said, how can these people possibly, how is everyone in the town going to be dead soon? And so a city kind of opens up, you can have neighborhoods, and you're not going to kill off the whole town, and that's the end of the series. But so I think cozies are really great because it appeals to a lot of people. There's no swearing. I use like, oh gosh, and for Pete's sake, and mine. And you can have romance and you can have attraction, but things will happen behind closed doors. So I think the cozy genre is very appealing and can go in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, just to add to that, what they were saying, the themes are kind of all over the board right now, which is so exciting. It's so exciting to look at the top 100 best-selling list and just see new space cozies. I would have never thought that was going to happen 3 years ago, right? And it's thrilling. So it's like the oddball ideas, as long as you have a respectful cover that displays that, that it's still a cozy, you respect the tropes inside, these kind of off-the-wall things are working. Like it is opening up to that. I don't think it's as limiting as some other genres.
That is very much the case. And you might find it surprising that the first sci-fi cozy mystery I ever encountered was Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country. Because it was a murder mystery, and it was a murder mystery on a spaceship. And I realized, I said that, and my father thought I was crazy. And I was like, no, it is a cozy. Because it has the trope, enclosed space, everybody knows everyone.
That sounds like a spaceship to me.
Yeah, that's a spaceship. Now, I'm going to go for that in what Mariah mentioned about the tropes and the themes. Because for me, with all the various types of ways you can write a cozy, to me it seems that it's harder and harder to find what a cozy is as opposed to a traditional mystery, or that line is being blurred. And so, in your view, considering the fact that most of us are familiar with what cozies were, right? What do you consider to be the tropes you absolutely, positively must have in today, 2019, in the Arthur age to have it to be a cozy in terms of content and presentation? Because that's where Mariah's gonna come.
Yeah, for me, I feel like there's a really good resource out there. If you haven't read Sarah Rosette's book on outlining a cozy mystery, read it. She goes through a really excellent rundown of the elements that are in cozy, and it's very big picture. So it's not so specific that it's gonna limit you in what you can do. For me, when I write, the consistency between what we do as a co-writing team, writing paranormal cozy, and then also me on my own, is when I think about what I want to feel in a cozy, I want to feel challenged, so the puzzle has to be good. Like the mystery has to be interesting and it has to not be obvious, but it can't be so complicated that you lose people. So I feel like there's this element of even the mystery itself feels comforting, right? Humor, I think, not like everything has to be slapstick, but there has to be some element of smiling happening when they're reading. And then the other piece for me, and this is from Sarah's book, she puts it so great, is the boundaries around the community is what makes the tension happen for the mystery, right? It's that there's only a certain amount of people who could have done it, and that heightens the anticipation. And I think that's part of like I always think of literally drinking tea and reading books, and that's how I want to feel in my heart when I read a cozy.
I think it used to be that the definition of a cozy was that the detective had to be an amateur. And that has changed, but I really, personally, I don't want to read a cozy where it's a professional, because I want to solve the mystery along with the detective. and I'm not a professional. Surprise, surprise. And so I think a lot of I know for sure my readers prefer that too. And so I think a lot of times, like if you're gonna do someone who's a cop or who was in the military or something like that, either they need to be the cop that's trying to solve the mystery while your detective is trying to solve the mystery, and they're butting heads or what, getting along or whatever. Or the person could be retired, and so they're no longer on the force and they no longer have access, because you don't want to give your detective access to things that the reader doesn't have access to, because that becomes kind of a cheat. Yeah, and so I think that kind of is a little bit where the lines are blurred, because I think with traditional mysteries, you very much have professional police and things like that solving crimes. But in cozy mystery, it's you solving the crime, so the person needs to be relatable. And believe me, my uncle would die laughing if he read my cozies, because he's a retired cop. And so I do actually get stuff from him and then mostly ignore it. Because I'm not trying to make something that's so I don't think cozies, they don't necessarily have to be super realistic. They just have to be believable and fun, because readers for cozies typically don't want to get bogged down in a lot of boring facts about and I think that again is where the line kind of is a little bit with cozies. It's kind of like the difference between a BBC costume drama, which is super not historically accurate, but it's fun and gorgeous and everybody wants to go drink tea with them, and an actual who's that dude that did Civil War? Ken Burns. I mean, okay, it's not quite that far, but I'm just trying to illustrate a point that the traditional stuff is way more realistic, and cozy mystery readers want an escape. They don't want it to be realistic. They just want it to be
and escape
believable.
with a murder.
Yes. So the murder must be cozy. I myself love a feel-good murder.
There are two things that I like to read in a cozy and what I like to write in a cozy. When the world is dark and things seem really bad, it's nice to be able to go into a cozy because you know that the crime will be solved, the criminal will get it, and everyone will be happy except for the person who was the victim of the crime. But it makes you feel like there's sense in the world and things can be hopeful and things are nice. And the other thing that I think are really important in cozies is the characters and the relationships between those characters. I like to write characters that I would really like to have as my best friend, and that those people are going to have your back, and that you can always count on them. And so I think those two things are really important in cozies, or anything that's kind of hopeful and grateful for your situation and the people you have around you.
So just the reason I entered into doing covers for cozies, especially the pre-mades, was a few years ago when I realized that some people might consider the change in our atmosphere politically getting darker and more frustrating and more separate. And generally when that has happened in our history, entertainment gets a lot lighter. So Shirley Temple was a huge star in the Depression. I saw this coming, and I am a businesswoman through and through. And I said, oh, things are gonna get lighter. I thought, I did humorous urban fantasy covers for a while, but then I found out about the cozy world, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be huge because it's about community and justice. And that's what people are craving so much right now. And then if you can also do it with a smile and a blanket and a cup of tea and a talking cat, that, I knew that was going to be huge. And so I, as a designer, wanted to ride that wave. And as far as the difference, because I'm working on the presentation aesthetic between more of your standard mystery and your cozy, is a sense of approachability. Just as they're talking about their contents, There's an approachability to a cozy story. Your cover needs to display that same approachability. Sometimes that's done with color, sometimes it's done with typography. And if you're writing standard mystery, and I realize some people don't know which one they're really writing, but once you figure out what the guts are of the story, you want something that's a little more sterile, maybe a little more ominous if you're writing a little darker, if you're writing a standard mystery, and you want something more approachable for the cozy aesthetic on the cover to really kind of show what's on the inside. I'm going that way.
Actually, I was going to send you back this way because I wanted to ask about, when it comes to covers, before I met Mariah, I messed up my covers a lot. And I thank her for setting me on the right path. But I'm going to ask about, a lot of folks, once again, don't know if they're doing a traditional mystery or a cozy. And we talked about what you look for, but we're not going to talk about how you fuck it up. They might know it, but they might have seen other people do it. Oh, I'm sorry. Did they not tell you that I cuss a lot? I don't know.
Which is funny for cozy audience. Clean it up, Chrishaun. Clean it up. So, what exactly specifically was your question?
What is the biggest mistake you see when folks want to do cozies and they're not really listening to either the audience or the comps? How do they mess it up?
Okay, so there's I've been learning also, like this is a learning journey for all of us. And the market rules, like they speak to us. And I recently had a huge name designer, a cover I designed for her, and it flopped hard. And we learned a lot of lessons from that. So one of the things I'm going to tell you, your cover, obviously it conveys the genre, but it also conveys the tone. If you have a very happy cozy, respect the color palette. So I personally do not use black or even a whole lot of dark colors for my cozy covers unless it's a paranormal. I will use all, and even then I don't use a lot of black. I will use navies and blues because it's a cozy. That's my personal preference. There's a ton of designers that use black and paranormal. I will use a lighter palette if it's a non-paranormal. That is so important. The other thing, when you look at your Amazon bestsellers on cozies, you will look at so many different art styles. How many, and they're like, I don't know what a cozy is supposed to look like. We've got traditional illustrations. We've got a few people that are using photos. I wouldn't recommend that. And then we've got the vector, or what some people call cartoony, but vector illustrations. And they're like, and I had to look at that. I'm like, how can we get away with that in this genre? Like, so many other genres look so similar, right? And you go to the cozies, and the aesthetic appears to be all over the board. I'm going to tell you why. Because our titles are what are telling people this is a cozy. Your title needs to say cozy, you can say the word, but I wouldn't recommend that. But it's generally alliteration. It mentions a crime. Sometimes it's a pun. That's why I was excited, got into this, because I love puns. And I saw Live and Let Chai. And I went, what the hell is that? What is that book? And I fell in love with that, and I was like, I want more of those. I want to make those titles. And so that's how I got into it. So your title is king. Your title needs to take a third to a half of your visual. That's what says this is a cozy and not a middle grade book, because our art actually can look very similar. But is that pun, it is that intelligent humor, or that alliteration, or the word murder that is saying this is a cozy. So sorry, I'm taking up the microphone, but that's just some that's just some tips. Get your tone, and color is your key to tone with cozies. Think of color, and I'm not saying that everyone has to have a blue cover, but I'm talking your pastels are going to be a more levity in your book. Your blues, your darks, those gorgeous things, that's probably going to be more of a paranormal. Your witches, your ghosts. Your chinchilla.
Where chinchilla? Trademark.
Well, I'm not a designer, but I know what I like when I see it. I love the puns too. before I started writing cozies, I wrote 3 traditional mystery suspense books, which didn't do very much, but you can really tell the difference between the cozies that I write and the mystery thrillers that I've written in the past, because the cozies are lighter, the colors are brighter, sometimes the titles in my name are written in cursive, where the mystery thrillers have bolder typography, the letters are thicker and kind of in your face more, and if you're writing and you're going to go between, I would suggest I should have had another pen name for the mystery thrillers, because sometimes people read those because they see J.A. Whiting on it and it's not what they think. There is swearing in those, and I think it's a big surprise for them because the crimes are, the things are described in more detail, and reviews can sometimes reflect that. So I would definitely keep my genres, pen names different if I started over again. So.
I can speak from grave experience. So my first cozy series, the Viola Roberts Cozy Mysteries, the first book was The Corpse in the Cabana. I mentioned it before. And I did everything right. I gave it a fabulous title.
Fabulous title.
It hit all the cozy tropes. There was an author, there was a murder, there was drinking, there was shenanigans, there were cops, there were, dead bodies galore. It was wonderful. But the cover was a photo that had been kind of zhuzhed a little bit to look like a painting-ish. Kinda. And it had kind of fun font, I thought, to kind of give it that sort of Agatha Christie-esque look. And I put out 7 books in this series, and they sold rather poorly. So I met Mariah last year here at 20Books to 50K, and we were sitting at dinner, and I just met the woman, and I said, well, I have this series, and I think maybe I need better covers. And she took a look and went, yeah. Okay, she didn't, she was much more gracious than that. So I pretty much booked her the minute I got back, I think, and she did the whole series, and she sent me this one, and I nearly wet myself with joy. It's very pink. There's flamingos. There's a typewriter.
A pink typewriter.
It's pink typewriter. Because the first one does take place at a writers' conference in Florida. You probably have no idea what I'm talking about. And so it just had all the things, and it was so cute. And every single one, I swear, they got cuter. The body in the bathtub, I think, is my favorite.
My favorite.
But it took a little while once I put up the new covers, but they started going up, and going up, and they're still going up. So let's just put it this way. In the last year, I've made back the money that I paid for those covers and then some, and I'm making quite a bit more than I was making before. Enough that I'm going to write more books in that series, which I wasn't going to do because they weren't selling. So the right cover, I cannot stress this enough, do not go cheap, do not go homemade unless you're a professional. Get the right cover. Save yourself time, money, and grief.
I'm going to speak to a couple of pieces of this because, of course, we sold on Radish and it's a very different market. So I would say a couple of things, regardless of what genre you write, like cozy, which subgenre, look at what sells on your platform.
Yeah.
Right? Because, and it's interesting, we were just having this conversation about how we had done simultaneous releases of a contemporary cozy series on Radish and a paranormal cozy series. And the contemporary series was branded to look a lot like Amazon, right? So it had covers like this, which are painty and pretty and very cozy-esque, and it tanked, and it didn't sell at all. And our Paracozy series was darker, like the covers were significantly darker, and so we switched the contemporary series to darker covers, because that's what was selling on Radish, and then it sold. Like our Paracozy series was 200K, you know, readers, right? So, because they track by read, and and then grew. And so we did well there, but it was all about being able to brand to what sells. So if you're going to release somewhere that isn't Amazon, and there are markets outside of Amazon for books, for cozies, then look at what sells on your platform and make sure to fit in. Because talking about what the biggest mistakes are, like the biggest mistake that I see is I don't want to look like everybody else, and so I'm going to try to be different. And instead of trying to be enough different that you feel comfortable with how different you are, you go like super different, and it doesn't look like anything or feel like anything that's resonant to the reader anymore. So I would say the biggest mistake that I see is trying to change the genre away from what the readers have said it is, what they want, because that's how they reward with sales, is that you do what they want, right? So if you try to change away from what the readers have said they want by sales, then that's when I see not just other people, but we fail by doing that, right? So know your market.
Great, we have 9 minutes. That looks like enough for a couple of questions. Anybody have a question for our panel? I'm gonna do this Jerry Springer style. The running part, not the what you said.
It just got interesting.
Hi, ladies. I was curious. I don't know much about radish. Can you talk a little bit more about sales on radish?
Yes, so there's a reason why we have recently pulled all of our books down off of Radish and are now releasing them on Amazon. It's not because Radish isn't good. It's because as soon as they stop promoting you, then it's much, much harder to sell there. But if you're promoted well, then you'll sell well. And so when we did a big cozy launch with Angie Fox and Deanna Chase, and then I did one contemporary book, and then we did a co-written, and those sold great because we did a huge launch with them, and then that series sold. But as soon as we started our second series, it didn't sell. So I would say like the audience there is much younger. So our Para-Cozy series is Bitten meets Riverdale, right? So that was very geared towards that audience, because that's what sells there. My contemporary cozies, which is The Vicar of Dibley set in Montana, in a bakery, does not sell at all on Radish, and so we pulled it down. So again, it's the market is very young, 18 to 24-ish. They do like cozies, but it has to be in a vein that they want to read. It has to be resonant to them.
Okay, I'm gonna jump into the next question. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, no,
Hi, sorry. So I write urban fantasy right now that's pretty gritty with bodies and cussing and all kinds of stuff like that, but I've decided I want to write a cat cozy. This has completely changed my thing here, but I'm just wondering if you guys have some advice for like a baby cozy writer who's really just trying to get into this.
Well, I made a very similar switch, because I was writing pretty gritty urban fantasy, paranormal romance, lots of sexy times, and chopping off vampire heads. So, if I were to do it all over again, I would put it under a different name. In some ways, it's easier to just keep one name. You don't have to keep track of a lot of different things. But you can really mess up your also bots and your algorithms and all that stuff. So you could even keep your last name and your first name and throw in a middle initial. It doesn't have to be that different. So, and in fact, I'm going back and doing that with my romances. I'm going to throw them under like Shea something MacLeod. I don't know yet, but we'll see. Number 2, invest in good covers from the get-go. Number 3, invest in a good editor, specifically an editor, a developmental editor who understands cozies and can catch your holes and things like this. There will be holes. There are still holes with me, and I'm 18 cozies in, okay? And they will kill you. Cozy readers will let you know. So that would be my advice, those 3 things. You don't have to be spending thousands. That's ridiculous. But just invest well and wisely.
all right then. Can you be really quick because we have one more question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, on your Amazon page, you can say also J.A. Whiting also writes mystery under this name and urban fantasy under this name, so people can find you in other things. So I would add that to your author.
First of all, ladies, most enjoyable panel of the day. So I'm a science fiction writer, but I also love to write mysteries and stuff like that. And one of the interesting things that you guys touched on was that sci-fi cozies are a burgeoning market. So I was wondering if you could give some advice to those of us who write sci-fi that might want to get into sci-fi cozies. What do the audiences look for? How do you break into that market? Stuff like that.
So let me say first, we haven't released yet. So, this advice may change given how, but so a friend of mine also wrote a series of sci-fi and released the very first book. And she marketed it too heavily towards science fiction people. I feel as a cover, like the covers were very science fiction. It was much more action adventure looking, and it did not feel like a cozy. So cozy readers had a harder time knowing it's safe to read this book. And I think a big piece with cozy people is safety, right? It's like, I need to know I'm gonna be okay. And so I would definitely have a sense of like Jessica Fletcher or Agatha Christie or something in your head when you're writing them so that you have that feel of cozy. And then like what we're planning to do is to market fairly aggressively to people who are reading something that would be a similar comp but set in a different place. So like I'm not gonna market to my contemporary people, right? I'm gonna market more to the para-cozy people who are already used to things not being set in the real world. And then we're gonna market it as something meets something else. And that's a big deal for me when you're marketing a brand new thing, is to market it with the comps in mind so that the readers know, oh, like how many of you when I said Bitten meets Riverdale are like, I'm gonna read that book, right? Yeah, because you know the comps. And so for me, like when Nikki was releasing her book and she said Jessica Fletcher meets Star Trek, I immediately wanted to read that book.
Yes.
But then she marketed it very, very much physically like a sci-fi. And so I don't know sci-fi well enough to know if sci-fi readers would enjoy cozy tropes. Like that's the thing that I don't know. And so we're gonna try to market to the crossover audience where we feel like with para-cozy they're already crossing, so that would be my big advice.
Yeah, I'm going to speak because I know exactly what she's talking about. And when I heard about the series, I was super excited. Jessica Fletcher in space, yeah! And then I saw the covers and I went,
That's very sci-fi.
no, I don't really want to read that. And I actually like sci-fi. I mean, I love Star Trek. Anyway, so yes, embrace the cozy.
Yeah.
Don't try and, so my series is like Firefly meets CSI. So it's way more, it's a bit more gritty than a cozy. So I would put it more in the traditional mystery end, and it doesn't sell very well. I think because of that. I think I need to redo it and embrace the cozy. And I think where we're at right now is we're right before things start going up with sci-fi cozy.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. So you might put it out and it's not maybe gonna do real well, but be patient and keep going because I have a very strong feeling it's gonna go up.
You got a minute and a half.
So part of the reason we did this was because of things like Orville coming out, right?
Yes.
So we're literally seeing like Netflix announced that they're doing a science fiction comedy like similar to Red Dwarf, right? So I'm like, oh my goodness, here we go, Orville, Red Dwarf-ish show. We're headed more towards lighter science fiction stuff. And I thought, well, why not? And so for me, if you're watching what's happening in the larger TV and entertainment market and you see that it's coming, that's why we say like we think that it's headed in that direction because of what we see happening in other places.
Because let's face it, Orville's cozy.
It is. It is. Jerry, Mariah, anything else y'all got? Like 50 seconds.
Let me just do for those that are kind of doing mashups, pay attention to your titles. Alliteration, puns, Get punny with it, get idioms. Use the internet. So I've come up with 500 cozy titles so far. I use the internet. I just did one about a vampire girl and I replaced the word thanks with thang, and I looked up, I Googled idioms with the word thank. Thank your lucky stars. Fang your lucky stars. That's how I do it.
All right. Okay. Bonus round. My favorite title is Handmade Murder. What's your favorite title, Jerry? Go. Shea, go.
That to be my own book.
Well, come on, The Corpse in the Cabana.
Becca, go.
Something with tart. I don't know. But seriously, I agree totally. I love mine. I have Evangivale and and Murdered Macaron is my favorite.
See? Okay, that works. Jerry, last thing you said.
From Leanne Dobbs, The Wrong Side of the Claw.
Nice. Thank you so very much. We're big on ending on time. Thank you so much. Thank you.